Okay, hello there. Um, it appears that I chose the wrong time to stream. There is literally no one online, but it's fine. This is definitely going to be a very, I would say, difficult stream, and there won't be much room for me to interact with my audience anyway. With my audience, that's usually one or two people. Anyhow, so let me just get right to it. So for the past 2 weeks, maybe, um, I was working on, or I have been working on this material that's this like broken tiles floor. I imagine somewhere outside, like in your garden, your patio, your front porch tiles, something like that. And yeah, it turned out to be quite a challenge at times, very complex, and definitely my most complicated and most complex material to date. I can't say I'm like 100% satisfied, but I'm fairly satisfied. And yeah, the graph is quite long. There is a lot going on. There are, uh, you know, a lot of settings I exposed. There are a lot of subgraphs. I'm working with atlases, height blending. I tried to optimize cracks. I'm using all sorts of floodfills and their like subsequent nodes. And yeah, it's quite a crazy thing. I imagine a professional will look at this and say, "Yeah, that's my everyday stuff, my everyday bread." But for me, this was a first, let's say. And I also, I because this is not my full-time job, I didn't have like um, unbroken sessions of concentration and focus. So, like I came up with a plan, started working on it, and I had to stop, and that led to a lot of delays. And yeah, next time I need to organize my work better. But in any case, let's get to it. I'll just share my InstaMAT thingy. There we go. So this is the material. Um, this is at 4K. We'll be demonstrating this at 2K because the graph is quite heavy. I think currently the processing, the yeah, it takes about 26,000 milliseconds on my computer, which is definitely maybe a little too much. I have a decent computer, but nothing too exciting. So maybe someone with a better graphics card and CPU can do better. But yeah, I would say that if you're going for something like this and you're going to use at least like 20 floodfill effects, then you have to get used to working at 2K and checking it 4K because you will not be able to work efficiently at 4K. So that's something to be aware of, right? And also atlases can be quite performance heavy, just like floodfills. And yeah, and there is a lot of noise that goes into this. Oh, hello there, unnamed player. Thank you, thank you. Glad you like it. Yeah, it took a lot of tweaking, a lot of back and forth. uh, all right, so as usual, we are going to start with the reference, which is this image mostly. I don't know where I found it. You can see I just Google something like old broken ceramic tiles, bathroom, or something like that, and this came up, which is fairly unusual for tiles for a couple of reasons. So the first one, I would say that this is definitely outdoors, right? It's like it's not your bathroom tiles with like perfect alignment. This is definitely, and there is this beautiful grid in the foundation there, and instead of your usual cement paste or whatever they use to create this layer, this like unbroken layer for tiles, sometimes they pour this liquid cement, and as it dries, it creates like a leveled out flat surface. Well, this is not the case, obviously, right? First of all, we have this like dirt layer on this really strange grid that I don't see very often. So I had to think about what kind of material it could be. I assume that this was cement or brick or some sort of clay-like material. So if you look at it, it's very dirty, but it's also very porous. and apparently it can take a lot of damage. So like it can get chipped quite heavily. So that's not your typical concrete material, right? It's more like brick or soft cement or something like that. Secondly, if you look at the tiles and the pattern, it looks like marble, but it's definitely not marble. It looks too artificial, and yeah, we talked about it on Discord, and I guess a good guess is that this is what they call faux marbling. Faux is from French, false or fake, if you will, marble, which is created by a technique called lithographic printing. I don't know much about it, but it is very similar to what we do in Substance Design or InstaMAT, right? Like it's artificially created. So that led me to this idea of like having a sort of a printed surface on a ceramic clay base, and I combined that idea and these like chipped off parts of the tiles with this image. So essentially what we have the base grit layer, we have this strange dirt layer, then we have a clay, ceramic clay layer, and then we have the surface, right? Plus a lot of dirt everywhere, a lot of damage everywhere. So this is what I was going for. And then I noticed that we had these like lovely details like twigs and maybe some leaves and some dirt specks and all that. And for that I used atlases. Obviously, the biggest challenge for this material is to get the feel of a broken tile right. So if you look at this, it's fairly reminiscent of a Voronoi pattern, but it's very, let's say, curved, right? It's not your sharp Voronoi crack, and there is very little like slow blur or small directional warp details. There are very little of those, or there are a few of those. Details are uncountable, or are they countable? They are countable. So there are a few of those. And yeah, it took me quite a while, especially because getting hairline thin cracks is very difficult in height displacement workflow. So I had to take that into account, that actually I ran into a dead end where I just wasn't able to create like hairline cracks, and I had to rethink my approach. So that actually leads to a fairly complex graph where I have to create a black and white mask with like thick cracks for floodfills, and then I also have to have like thin cracks that actually follow the same outlines, but they are only subtracted to a certain level instead of the whole way. So it's not a black and white mask, it's a grayscale mask, it's beveled, and that allows for thin cracks. And then you have to use both masks to sort of control your height, and your color, obviously, and your roughness by extension. So so that's that. Oh yeah, there's obviously some damage here, some like holes, spots, you could say. There's very fine dirt and some cracks here and there. There are like holes in the base. There is this weird smooth parts that I also try to simulate a little bit. All right, so that's the reference. Nothing else really comes to mind, because it's really just this image, and I try to get as close as I could to this kind of material with the addition of this effect. But I definitely didn't want to do something like this, right? Like if you look at interior tiles, they are like super perfectly aligned. You have these little things that keep them in place until it's all dry, and you have this typical paste there and a flat cement base. I didn't want to do that. Yeah, just a few other references of cracks when they are a bit sharper, but you can also see that it's fairly curved. It's not too detailed. It's detailed where in the places where it actually chips and connects with these with the other tiles quite a bit. All right, yeah, some color references for the clay. I ended up not going with this, but it was a good idea to look at something like this for that raw ceramic material. Yeah, and I found this on ArtStation. This was actually more of a, I don't want to be critical, and I don't remember the artist, but I actually didn't like this too much. It has all these like effects that you see everywhere in CGI tiles. First of all, it's like definitely Voronoi. There you can see like these super sharp, super straight Voronoi lines. Secondly, it's pure chaos, and there is so much noise, right? Like, where did you see stones like this, like with this kind of grain, with this kind of damage, so uneven, right? There's obviously like a lot of overall high displacement, and then you have like places like this where it just doesn't make sense, right? Like you have a tile that's intersecting with another tile. And I understand it's difficult to make, but that's why I decided not to do this, right? Like I didn't want to have a tile that's like on top of another tile because it would create this like uncanny feel to it. Like it works here because you can't see the other side, but if you look closely and if you're an artist or someone who pays attention, you will see that this is like really strange and it's suddenly like this is a soft material below it or what's going on, right? And of course, you can see, and it's to some extent, this is always unavoidable. You have a lot of tessellation artifacts on the edges of the tiles. That goes with the floodfill problem because you need a black and white mask, a very sharp one, and that's a problem, right? So I tried to mitigate that, but of course I also have that. There is nothing you can do, or there is very little you can do, or only so much you can do. All right. Yeah, so it was like when I first looked at it, it's like, yeah, I would like to do something like this, but actually, I ended up noticing a lot of things that I didn't like about this material. In any case, I guess the initial inspiration came from Johnny Knows on YouTube, who made a fairly interesting video on a material like this. He tried to show like how to improve a material like this from sort of a beginner standpoint to fairly complete. I wouldn't say advanced material, but like good-looking material. He had a couple of some advice that I found to be a bit lacking. I think I mentioned it when I went through over the color map. I don't want to be over critical, but he suggested some tricks for the breakup, and I'm not convinced that it's too realistic, and some of them actually straight up didn't work for me, no matter how much I tried. Of course, might be the difference between Substance Designer and InstaMAT, might be the difference between like my skill level and his skill level, but I think the approach, especially to sort of tapering the cracks at the edges, was just an illusion that doesn't actually work. But enough of that. Let's leave this reference behind us. Oh, maybe I should talk about the color a little bit. So I think my color overall is a bit darker and less contrasty. I tried to sort of think about the lighting in this. It's obviously coming from up here. There is like a very sharp reflection, and it's very diffuse. And but you can at the same time you can see very sharp shadows. So that's actually good for reference because it gives you an idea of how high things should actually be. But I had to think about like how to sort of subtract the sort of the baked in lighting that's in this image and to think about it in neutral terms, if you will. Also, another effect that I decided to add, and I'm not 100% happy with, are these loose tiles everywhere. These loose tiles, they are like if you make them where only the grid is, right? That's easy enough. That's not a problem. It's just a breakup, and you just use floodfills to remove them. The more complex problem was to create the second layer of these, basically on top of the tiles. And the most complicated thing that took me a while to figure out, and in the end I kind of hacked it. I didn't like create a proper setup for it, but it works. Is to create these flipped ones. Yeah, there is a tile that was obviously it's flipped on its head, and you can see the grid below it, but it's basically inverted in height and also in color. And then you have this part which was probably on this surface, and it still keeps some of that dirt/clay detritus feel to it. So yeah, that's everything that went into the material. Obviously, there is a lot of dirt, a lot of fine dirt. It's always a challenge. I ended up looking with something that's like I ended up with something that looks a bit more like stone than loose dirt. I actually ended up liking it, so it's not that bad. But originally I wanted to do something like this, right? Like really fine, uh, typical dirt, instead of this kind of stony shape. It's a bit difficult to art direct your noises at this level, so like at the very fine or almost too fine a level without going overlay into like how do I put this? Slow blurs and directional warps that are just totally uncontrollable, and you change something a little bit, and it's like the whole look changes too. So it's there is a lot of fine tuning that went into this. All right. I would also like to thank Daniel Batke for giving me advice the whole time I was working on this. He was kind of my personal eye director. So big thank you to Dan. Thanks. All right. Enough ranting. Let's have a look at the material. All right then. So there it is. I'll just show you one more time. You can see the holes here, the loose tiles, the flip tiles. Oh my god, it's clipping here. That's not supposed to be doing that. Oh, sometimes there are these errors. You have to play with the seat a little bit because there is so much going on, and you know, I try to protect the slopes and the edges. I'll talk about it later, but you know, it's never perfect. And again, you can see this like jagged lines. It's a bit better if you go like further away and if you don't look at it at like too much of an angle, but it's there and it has to be there. That is just the limitation of the technology right now. I mean, I tried to bevel it, I tried to blur it a little bit, but it doesn't look too good. I would much rather have these artifacts from the side. Yeah, and it's on a sphere. Like if you look at something that's flat, let's just use a plane. Where is it? Here. Yeah, it's like it's not that bad. Like you still see it somewhere, but it's not that bad. So I guess it would depend on what it would look like in the game engine, for example. Certainly something to maybe work on a bit more. All right, so here we are. I'm gonna show you at 2K, and I'm gonna show you like this because that's where a lot of the problems will be apparent. And also for the sake of speed, because recalculating a graph of this size at 4K takes a lot of time, and it would be laggy on YouTube. All right, so let me switch to the graph, and we are going to start with the height map today. As you can see, it's like huge, right? The graph is huge. Like I tend to isolate parts of the graph so that they are like in one screen or on one screen when I work on them. But obviously, you know, staying organized and at the same time having everything at hand was a bit of a challenge. And yeah, there is a lot going on. And obviously, the more I worked on it, the more parameters I created. You can see that I have maybe 50 or more parameters controlling all kinds of things in the graph, mostly color, mostly tiling, and like density of certain effects. So and some post-processing stuff. There is something to be said for using what the InstaMAT calls VisX, visual expressions, which is a little scripting language that's not too difficult to learn, which allows you to specify what's visible when you have certain settings enabled. But for me, this was mostly for me at that time, right? Like I was thinking obviously about the end state of the material which I intend to sell if someone likes. Hopefully someone will be interested in buying this, but so I thought about like what the end user who is not the author of the graph will want to change maybe. So obviously colors, right? Obviously tiling, obviously the amount of damage, the amount of leaves and rocks and pebbles. But at the same time I had to have some parameters at hand while working, so I kept exposing stuff as I went. All right, so it's a tiling material, as in filled with tiles, and also tiling in the sense of the texture repeats itself seamlessly. So we start with a brick generator. A brick generator is a very useful node and really simple actually. So what you get is, of course, bricks. You can specify the amount. You can also specify some variance settings, like you can add Pebbles, you can add luminance, differentiation, and so on and so on. For me, it was only to generate the initial floodfill, so that I could create the pattern I wanted for the grid. So I start with an 8x8 tile with a fairly small gap, fairly large gap at 0.2. So you can see that it's like actually quite kind of thick. But don't worry, because we are going to be using a lot of other effects. It's not going to be this thick in the end. And you can see in the graph, like it's almost the same size as the cracks. And then I take another one, and I actually counted these little tiles here, and that's what I created here. Yeah. And I also have this one. It's another one. There is a bit of bevel there. And so first of all, I take this floodfill. You could take the floodfill in with this inbuilt functionality here. I don't know why I didn't take it, to be honest. I could have, right? It's probably like better for performance, but I created another floodfill here. And that goes into a couple of places. But first of all, it goes into a floodfill mapper. A floodfill mapper takes an input image and remaps it onto each floodfill tile with a few settings. So first of all, you have to say tile UV, and then the issue is sometimes especially if you tell it to preserve the aspect ratio, there is going to be a slight offset depending on how many depending on the settings of these brick generators, right? Like the aspect ratio might be a bit different, so you will get like a skewed remap. Well, so I actually ended up not using it, and it turned out better. So I have like 5 and 5 here, 11 on this side, and I think this one actually cut 2 away, right? So it's actually not a square, but it's perfectly fine. It looks good anyway. So yeah, that's the floodfill mapper, and I do it again. And this is just like the larger part. So if you look here, I have these little crosses on these like square shapes, and then we have the large grout, and then we have the actual large grid. So that's what we do here. Very simple stuff. Okay, so this goes into like first processing steps. So I take just a sec. All right. So yeah, first of all, we take a couple of things for the floodfill. So we take this random direction and distance it. I talked about this a couple of times before. You don't want these lines in the middle, because that will create distortions. When you start using the vector warp, where is my nearest vector warp? Here. So what vector warp does, based on this vector input, it will shift stuff in random directions, or rather in the direction specified by these colors. These colors represent vectors in UV space in X and Y axes. So there are like 2 gradients going on, right? There is an X, which is, what is it? Is it red to green, and another one that's like what? Blue to red? I don't remember. Yeah, but you know what I mean, right? Like you look at any UV map, or for example at floodfill, and you get these gradients. That's exactly what's going on. It's an X and Y gradient. Yeah, and so this just creates a tile for each tile, and the vector direction for that. So then you will get the whole part of the image that would be mapped on a particular tile gets moved in random directions, which creates variance, which is what we want most of the time. All right, then I also take floodfill to color and floodfill to random gradients. We are talking about this grid, so that's just a variation in height. It's subtle for now. Yeah, and we start like putting it together. Some noises, some slow blurs to create a bit of variance, nothing too strong. Yeah, I leveled it out. I started working in this way. I don't know if it's smart or anything, but basically I try to specify the height levels for each segment or each aspect of the material separately. So I said, like this is not going to be the lowest level of my material. It's going to be the holes and the cracks, but I don't want it to be too high. I don't want it to cover more than, let's say, 20% of the height of the whole normalized 0 to 1 range. So that's what I started doing here, so that I had some control. This is actually very useful when you start using height blends, right? You get a better idea, a better sense of where the height values actually are. Since we don't really have a color picker or like a color inspector where we could just like point at a texture and see what the value is, this is like the only way I can really see what's going on. Of course, we have the minimax node, but it's not too reliable in terms of like knowing where most of the values are. If you look at minimax here, it will give you a gradient and a value, right? And so the lowest is here, the highest is here, and you know that the values, the maximum value is 20 and the minimum is 15. That's because that's what this level node does, right? So I'm in the range of like the difference of 5 units of height. All right. Yeah. And so then I started working on the damage. So this is just like different slopes. It's very subtle, but it adds a little bit to the material. You can see it in like these shadows somewhere. Somewhere they appear, somewhere they don't. It gives it a more natural look. So yeah, damage. Well, first of all, I take these flood fills again. So I'm flood filling the flood fill, and that's going to be a recurring theme. Sorry, recurring theme for this project, because it's flood fill into flood fill into flood fill into flood fill. Yeah, I'm taking these, and I'm using this flood fill to mask, and I'm using this input. That's also something that's going to be happening quite a lot. And input takes a grayscale image, black and white mask, and it will allow you to sort of have a noise drive where your mask happens, right? The white will mean there will be a now let me see if I get it right. Where the blacks are, the mask is going to remove whatever is going into it, right? So if you take a flood fill and then we look at this, it will only remove or mostly remove the stuff. Actually, I can show you. And if I do this, maybe I can solo this. Will it be? Because it's not very pronounced, but yeah, the white reveals in this case, and the black hides, if I'm not mistaken. It might be the other way around, but no. And but at the same time, you have this density input, so I can say like 60. Sorry, on top of that mask of this input. Oh, this is the problem. I see, because I have a value here. Grid surface where? So base grid. Where is that? Grid surface where? Grid surface where? Grid surface here. So if I just say 100%, yeah. Here you can see what it does, right? So the black bars remove the same thing from the flood fill, right? And you also have this setting here, which is exposed. In this case, it's just a local variable for me. I didn't want this to change too much. The user shouldn't be able to change that. And yeah, and that also randomly removes additional parts. So that's why we have this. Okay, then I'm just doing a bit. Oops, come on. Yeah, it has to recalculate. I also slope blurred it. That gave me this. It's more visible at 4K, but it gave me like little um, dents in the um, in the grid. Yes, and then we are blending it together using some other mask, some other noise. Yeah, should actually probably just do this so that I know that there is a noise. Uh, yeah. Because it makes the graph a bit more legible for me anyway. Not that I need it now that I'm finished, but sure. All right. Yeah, so you know, oranges for me, this warning preset, I generally use that for noises. Reds are where like important stuff happens, like important steps, and the same goes for the blue frames, which is the info, which I found that the color preset is not the best. It's not very legible, but at least it gives me like an idea where stuff is. Anyhow, so that's the first damage blended in. It's very subtle, but you can see we get these like height imperfections. All right, more high damage. This time it's these holes right here. So for that, you just create a custom grunge. In this case, I used shape scatter set to ellipse, which gives you a random scatter of well, ellipses with some variant settings. You can definitely fine tune this as much as you want. Then I warp them a little bit, and then I iterate. Again, iterate takes the same image and copies it over itself with some settings and makes it smaller and smaller. Then I slow blur it just a little bit to get, you know, variance. I slow blur it again, which again makes it a bit more interesting. And then I use vector warp. I guess for an effect like this, we didn't have to do that. Vector warp can be quite performance heavy, but not for an image like this. So I said, you know, why not? Since I am allowing the user to remove most of the tiles and have just the base, I wanted this to be broken up so that it's like not obviously repeating. And yeah, we are subtracting that. So that's our first damage. Then we are doing something very similar. These are the broken edges of this grid, like this effect along the lines of the grid and along the grout, I guess. So again, I take crystals noise too because I wanted some sharp transitions. It didn't work out the you know as I had imagined, but I'm getting better at this, at like choosing the noises I want for you know, do we want a smooth wavy pattern or do we want something that's chipped? Well, crystal noise generally will give you more chipped look, so that's why I use them. I stretched it because I wanted like long lines. Then I iterated it, auto leveled, warped them a little bit, so introducing detail. Then I transformed it by 90 degrees and blended them together, so I get a grunge like this. It doesn't look like much, but it's perfectly fine because we are not going to use it as is. So that then we slow blur it again with itself actually set to minimum, which will like eat inside the shapes, which is great, right? Then I iterate it again, create more variation, slow blur it again to create a little breakup, level it, etc., and vector warp it so that it's not too uniform. And then I'm subtracting it using a mask. And that mask is something I had before. It goes all the way to this first break generator because I only want these lines, right? Like I don't want any, I don't want it to spread too far from these lines. So that's what I'm using. I'm inverting it, again using some other noise, again crystal noise, and do some processing like before, slow blur, grayscale mask, warps, using different noises. I should have optimized this a bit more, but that was just the beginning of the graph and I didn't think too much about performance yet. I could go back and change this to something more, you know, sane, but that's fine for now. Let's go again. And yeah, we end up with something like this, which serves as the mask for this effect. So we are multiplying this in, which is strange. Why are we multiplying it? Shouldn't we be subtracting it? I guess it works out. Yeah, this is one of the effects that actually should be improved because it still gives a very wavy pattern, and I would like something that's like very angular. So I might revisit this before I ship it. But yes, so it looks good here, right? Like it gets this like chipped look, but at the same time it's very wavy in other places like here, right? And that's not what I wanted. I wanted a sharp transition. So we'll have to, or I'll have to fix that, I guess. But that's why I also do these streams to sort of revisit my graphs, talk about it, and figure out what I need to do. So hopefully that's helpful to me and to the others as well, the thought process behind it. All right, so that's just the first damage of the grid. Now moving on, yeah, we just recover some of the ranges so that they are in like, I didn't want them to be lower than 10% of the normalized range. So that's what this levels node does. And then we are starting to work on this grout a bit more. So at first I had two lines there. Ended up disappearing actually. The second layer of it ended up disappearing. I don't know if I can show you. Sometimes you can see it. It comes at a bit more at 4K. There was like a middle grout line in there, just a little bit. You can see it here maybe, because I imagine that they put the tiles there while it was still like wet, I guess, or maybe something sort of accumulated in the gaps in between before they put in the grout itself for the tiles. So that was the idea, but I ended up not liking it. So it's mostly subtracted, and it's just like a little bit of height detail here and there, and it's mostly flat. But yeah, so that's how it started. So again, we take the mask of the grid, we bevel it to make it smaller this time. Yeah, use curves, warps, stuff like that. We end up with something like this. It's just a bit wobbly, and that's the first pass for this. Again, maybe this is like a bit too fine for what it is, and we end up using a lot of dirt and damage. So maybe this wasn't strictly speaking necessary. I was just building the graph and looking back at this. The first steps are not always necessary. It's just like you're trying to develop the look as you see it, and you focus on a single element at a time, and sometimes it's just like it ends up being not necessary. That's just the way it is. Yeah, and here I just do a much bigger level. Bevel, level it out, and again use curves to control it a little bit, warp it, slow blur it, levels, essentially the same thing, and I get this broken up line, which we end up adding back into it, right, using a maximum. But as you can see, that like it's not too much. Like, here it is, right? Like there is a bit of a bump. It was a much more pronounced effect, but I ended up removing it for the most part. So again, this part could be removed, I guess, for optimization purposes. All right. Let me drink. All right, I bought some new tea. It's delicious. All right. The cracks and the holes. I guess I could have, and I should at some point, create my own crack generator that I can use. But I just went into the library. If you type crack, you have this crack combination nodes, and crack thin and crack simple and whole cracked. So I took these and I created my own scatters out of them, and it worked just fine. It's a really good looking crack. And yeah, so I just used these. Used random scatter. Random scatter is like a weaker version of the guided scatter. It lacks like the inputs that you can use to drive varied scatters, how rotated it is, etc., etc. But for this purpose, it was more than enough. It still gives you the variation settings. That's yeah, that's what I wanted. So yeah, I just increased the rotation variance to 1, the scale variance, the flip variance, the offset variance. Yeah, all of that is and the luminosity, the luminance variance. It's very easy, you know. You don't have to overcomplicate it for something like this. It's going to be covered anyway, right? For the most part, it's going to be covered by the dirt and the tiles and basically everything else that comes on top, right? So it's not that important. All right, so now this is a late addition based on some feedback I got from Dan. He said that my tiles lacked a certain amount of damage, and it's mostly this, right? This kind of thing, and it added so much to the material you wouldn't believe. Like his experience really shows he's very good at this, and he just like immediately knew that this was missing, right? And then I looked at the reference and I noticed that it was there as well. So I ended up adding another random scatter. This time it's just this hole cracked, and the previous outputs. Oops, I shouldn't have clicked on that. I always forget. Anyway, yeah, I basically take the same inputs plus the hole cracked, which is also something you can, I think I already mentioned, yeah, you can also find it in this var impressions library. And we process it with random scatters, directional warps, using different noises. Yeah, let me just organize a little bit. Using different noises and different blurs and slow blurs, stuff like that. In the end, yeah, well, I should say, for this kind of effect, sharpen is really good. Sharpen will give you more definition for the cracks, and also this, like, if you really crank it up, it will give you a very jagged look, and it will emphasize the edges, which is actually something you want, right? It won't show that much in the height map because the difference is very subtle, but it will create some reflections, and that's what you want, right? Like I don't know if we can see it here. It's like a bit lifted here. Of course, not entirely realistic, but it works. And yeah, small detail, works nice. All right, unnamed player says nice approach for the cracks. Thank you. I guess it's just a scatter approach. You know, nothing too special. But I was getting tired, and I didn't want to create my own cracks from scratch. It's a bit time consuming to get it to look right, and I really like what their cracks look like. So yeah, it's like it has these very sharp feel to it. I don't know if that's the right word. Anyhow, yeah. So we are using that, and yeah, most of these are masks for the color and roughness. So it goes all the way to the end of the graph where we reuse it again. So just if you're wondering what's this like loose blend doing there, it's mostly for the masking. All right, then. Yeah, we blend it together using different noises for a breakup. So you can see the cracks are already there, but I didn't want them to be uniform in height everywhere. So we are using some noise to break it up in the mask. That's why we are like reconstructing the mask again, right? Like so. Okay, you have a black and white image. In this case, the cracks, and you have a noise that you are feeding into the opacity. Well, this is also a black and white mask. So what you need to do, if this is how you like this goes into the foreground, this is into the background. So white reveals the foreground, black shows the background. Well, all you need to do is to take the blend and use multiply, right, with the same settings. So sorry, with inverted settings. So the foreground here is this noise, and the background is whatever went into the foreground here. And it doesn't really matter what kind of mode you have here, right? Like this will work regardless of whether you're adding or subtracting or taking a difference or like using something crazy like Phoenix. That doesn't matter because here we are just processing masks, and multiply and subtract and add are your best friends here. Okay, So that's that. Just a little trick. Okay, so here we are adding these cracks. I ended up using this clamp node, which basically clamps it, right? Like it cuts off a part of the histogram, so no values above 25 will be used. Why? Because down the line I'm using a histogram shift. Node histogram shift. Let me add histogram. Oops, I didn't want to solo this. Histogram shift. Now, what histogram shift does? Let me just take this. Oops. Histogram shift, right? Histogram shift will shift the whole image around. The problem I have with this node is that it wraps around. Like if you go into minus values, it suddenly becomes pure white. And so if you do that, at the end of the height processing, you will. This is an easy way to recover like your range, right? Like let's say you kept adding levels of details, and I mean adding into height, getting closer and closer to 1, and suddenly your whole graph is like 10, 11 points above 0, right? And and you want to get back, but at the same time, sometimes you will get negative values. Because, for example, here I used subtract, and I'm subtracting more, and so technically speaking, the blacks are blacker than black, if that makes sense. So we are suddenly when we use the histogram shift, we start getting these super peaks in the middle of the cracks, right here, for example. Yeah, if you see, I turned off the clamp, and suddenly it goes around because of the histogram shift at the end of the graph. So I had to go and fix this. But since I was adding this after histogram shift, I had to treat this. I had to adjust this. So that's why they are there. If you work a bit smarter and like stay in the ranges you want to stay in, you won't have this problem, right? So, but I was like, to give you an idea, this happens after all of this, here somewhere. Here, yeah? So you can see this is like, after I added most of the effects, I realized that I wanted to add the second level of the cracks, the second layer, and there wasn't enough room for it in the 0 to 1. Alright, bye-bye, unnamed player. Thank you. And yeah, I'll just keep talking, and you can rewatch it later. Have a good one. So yes, that was a bit of a snafu, but the clamp node saved this. And since we are really just going a little bit down, it doesn't matter. I'm not too concerned about the loss of detail in these holes, right? It actually looks good that it's flat, right? It's as if it was revealing an even deeper layer. Yeah. So yes, that's the holes and the cracks. And I also added this fractal noise and fractal sum sloped, which are nice nice nodes for like your stone damage, I guess. And so what I do, I just create a grunge map out of it, sharpen it quite a bit, and do the same thing. I just subtract it, and it creates additional levels of or additional details. It's kind of mixing with the holes from before. So yeah, that's it. I don't know if it's here a little bit. It's kind of blending in with all the other damage. So that's it. More damage, more interest, more visual interest. And then I take these spots 2 noise, or grunge. It's under the category of grunge because it's a combination of noises that it's like a preset of different noises put together. Transform it a little bit, nothing too special. I combine it with another node, with another noise, Jesus Christ, from before. Sharpen it, and yeah, again, I'm taking a minimum this time. It's just like a final breakup for this grid pattern. Okie dokie, that's it. Moving on. I added some subtle scratches. Let's see if I can find any. They're actually quite subtle. I didn't want too much of that because it doesn't make much sense. But it was another detail that I saw in my reference. It's like yeah. It's for example this. This is a crack or like a scratch. It's just a line that's adding more damage to the pattern. So again, I'm subtracting a little bit of that. It might look that there is nothing there, but it's actually there. The more you use the luminance variance on this, and the more you distort them, the more scale you use here, the less visible they will be, right? They are like eating inside, or like they are becoming less and less bright, yeah? So they will be thinner. Hello, Mike. Hello. How you doing, eh? I managed to press go live this time. I'm very proud of myself. Anyhow, moving on. So these were the scratches. Again, more surface damage. Nothing too special. Again, you can see me doing the mask trick. Again, I'm just multiplying the mask with this so that I can use it later. This actually happened when I started working on the color, right? Like it didn't happen, like I just didn't have this here before I decided that I need a special mask for this effect, right? But you can always go back and reconstruct your mask this way for this blend, reconstruct your blend. All right. Yeah, then I'm using a vector warp again on just clouds noise. And I actually said that this clouds noise doesn't have to be as detailed because it's just adding a little bit of like height variation onto my tiles. I could even go lower probably to save some power there. And yeah, I'm just using vector warp and blurring it a little bit so that I get rid of these super sharp transitions. And yeah, I'm just adding a little bit of it in. So if we look at before, there is already the gradient from the floodfill, but now we get even more breakup and a little bit like extra height there. So that's that. I don't know. It's like all these effects they are badly visible, right? But together they put like they create a certain feel for your material. So that's why I keep adding these like subtle details. It takes 5 seconds to create something like this, so it's really not that difficult. So you should probably do it, unless you are saving on performance heavily. All right. Yeah, you don't have to apologize for being late. Come on, man. You're like one of 5 viewers, you know. You just missed another viewer, the unnamed player person. But yeah, thank you for coming. Hopefully this is going to be useful. Okay, moving on. So we already added these like middle-sized holes here and elsewhere. And I also wanted to add like subtle bits or small bits in there. And so, these little holes here and there, it comes out at 4K much better, obviously. And we are using the fractal sum for this, sharpening it. And this creates a lot of grain on the surface. You could also use grain noise, for example, and slow blur it with itself, which is actually what I'm doing right here. Right? I have a grain noise, which is very dense noise. I'm slow blurring it with itself, saying maximum, just a very small amount, and you have to blur this. You have to blur this by like 1 or 2%. It will give you these like inflated little bubbles. And then if you level this, like this, if you increase the contrast and remove the blacks, you will get a variation of little dots. It's subtle, but it will give you some more interesting effect instead of just grain. So yeah, I'm taking that and I'm subtracting it from the surface again. Again, I used the vector warp here for the mask. Probably not necessary, it's such a small detail. Could actually drop that. I don't know. I was on a wave of vector warps. Another fractal sum. You can see that it's very dark. but then we auto level it, you get this kind of pattern, cloudy pattern. Again, could have reused another noise maybe. I guess we could actually decrease the size here because it's just a mask. So we do not care too much about the resolution here. Okay, good. Let's say warning. So this is where we are now. We added all that damage, all that grain, all the height variation. It's all there. Okay. Some more holes. I'm just taking the previous grain noise and just rotating it a little bit because I thought it wasn't enough. It's just a quick way to add an additional effect. Very cheap, right? Because you're like reusing the image from before, just rotating it slightly. Or maybe not. Yeah, I think I just rotated by like 90 degrees, 180 degrees. But it doesn't matter. It's just a small detail. I just didn't want it to subtract from the already subtracted holes. At least not uniformly. Okay. And then I'm taking a Dirt 2, which is a grunge again, a combination of noises. I think this is the grunge I like the most in InstaMAT from the InstaMAT presets. It actually sells the effect of a fine to medium-sized dirt specks very well, and it's quite sharp, and I sharpen it even more. And yeah, that looks good in my opinion. If you go inside, you can see that it's just turbulent purlins and clouds, or freckle sum in this case, blended together. Yeah, so we have a dense noise, freckle sum, which is all kinds of freckle sums and just a little bit of adjustment. So it's like this very fine, detailed, finely detailed grunge map. Easy to make yourself, by the way. Alright, so Dirt 2, and sharpening it, blending it in with some noises from before. Again, sharpening, I really wanted something super sharp, right? Like almost pixelated, because we are subtracting, we are adding that this time, and it creates like a tangible effect to I don't know, that's not the right word. It adds coarse detailing on the surface. I don't know if I can turn it off, because I don't know how much it's going to come. Yeah, you can see that it's like super smooth now. If I turn it on, oh, it's like a little better. I don't know how much it shows over YouTube. There is also there are a lot of other effects on this now, so it doesn't come through that well. Again, something maybe it's like we are just adding 3%, right? Like we don't have to do too much. It's one of the finest details there. Okay, so again, if you're like saving on performance or time, if you're in a rush, like don't do 7 of these effects, but maybe 2, right? Take the dirt and take the spots and take one of these like middle to fine level details like clouds or freckle sum, blend them in together, and that's it. You'll be fine. But if you want to have like a lot of different aspects of your material controlled individually, I would recommend this approach. Like I've been doing this for a couple of months now, and it really adds a lot to the materials in my opinion. And also it just becomes automatic. Like this thing can take you, I don't know, 10 minutes maximum, even less, if you just know what you're doing. You're just like going through the motions, right? Like you're taking the clouds and blurring it slightly. Then you take the freckle sum and sharpen it slightly. Then you're taking the grain noise, and you already know that this setting will give you the balls. You just clamp it, or the bubbles, and you just subtract it. And like this is very quick. All right. In fact, I could make a subgraph out of this, right? Like let's say, you know, grain holes 1 could be a grunge that I could reuse many times, but this takes so little time that it's better to just have it like this. All right. Okay, and so that's the base. That's the height map for the base. Down the line, I will be adding a lot of dirt, and that's going to add so much to this as well. So I don't know if we can just click preview, maybe preview as what? It's height. It doesn't really work that much. You can't. Well, this is where we are after all that, but I would have to turn off the color and everything. So unfortunately, I can't really demonstrate what it looks like without all the other effects. Okay. So yeah. Let me drink again. Now, the parameters that I exposed for this one were fairly limited. I get some color parameters, and I get this ground thickness, which controls this thickness right here of this sort of grout thing that separates the tiles. And at the end, I also, while I was working on the roughness map, I just added a setting for the range in which the roughness should sit, more or less. I actually wanted to change the UI on this. Change UI contrast to slider range. That's it. That's it. That's beautiful. I have to change that everywhere. Yeah. So not much to be controlled here, but it's fine. I also have some local variables that the end user will not be able to change. Mostly how much damage there appears on these little squares. But I thought that I found a pretty good value for the look that this material has, and I didn't want anyone to mess with that too much. It actually doesn't change that much anyway. So that's it. All right. So okay. Now comes the complex part, because we have to think about how the base grid will interact with the tiles. So obviously I knew that I was going to have cracks, and that I was going to be removing a lot of the tiles based on that. But to get this to look natural is not a simple task. So I kept going back and forth, and that was where I wasted most of my time, or not really wasted, but where I spent most of my time. And first consideration is to limit the range of the base. If you go 0 to 1 on the base, where do the tiles come, right? Where do they go? Well, so I limited the bottom part to like 30-35% of the height. So that's number one. Number two, you have to have something that correlates your grid to the tiles. In this case, I ended up making another brick texture, so a brick generator, and I'm having a parameter there that drives the count, 8 by 8, the gap size, and that's it. Right? The gap size, actually, I played with it a little bit, and I have this inflate local variable. I wasn't sure at first how thick these lines should be, right? And at first I used sort of a beveled tile, and so it was much. The gap was much wider, at least visually, and so that's why I had this inflate, which would push the tiles back towards each other. But I ended up not needing it in the end with how I approached the later setup. So I'm taking this, and this brick generator has a little bit of variation in it. So little, in fact, that it creates these anti-aliasing problems. But that's fine. Again, we are going to be distorting it a lot. And I wanted to maintain the separation for each tile so that it wouldn't, like, the whites wouldn't touch, so that the floodfill would be able to detect it down the line. Because floodfill is going to be what drives the whole effect of removing the tiles, of like revealing the base grid. And for that you need clear separation of blacks and whites. So that's what's happened there. And we'll go all the way here where the madness starts. So I just used, and I keep using this assign image node. It's basically a reroute, but it shows you the image. And it's 0 cost. So there might be some little cost to rendering this preview, which is tiny, obviously, and but you can see what you're doing, right? Like if you have a graph like this and you're like, oh my god, what does this reroute do? For example, this reroute goes probably all the way to the color, and like, what is that, right? If you go all the way there and you keep scrolling, you will lose track of the connection and all that. So it's good to have that exposed where, or like visualized where you're going to be working with it. So yeah, we take this height, and you can see that I'm using it quite a bit. First of all, we take a floodfill. And then, of course, a random direction that's going to be used in many places. I distance it again. Don't worry about this, right? Like if there is a hole, it doesn't matter that there is this distorted weird round thing, because that's where the effect will not matter, right? We will be using this as a mask. So we have this for all sorts of vector warps, obviously, and I also started working on some more damage. You can see that I chipped away a lot of that initial grid. So what it does, it creates these effects here, right? Like these little indentations. It's not exactly the same as removing the tile entirely. That's another effect later down the line, but it's just like eating inside of it. Yeah, by the way, I was getting these weird artifacts here, so I actually multiplied it with itself at the end to remove it, I think. Yeah. All right. So that's the first thing to do. Now, oops, what's going on here? I hate that this happened. Okay, so when you do this, put it somewhere, and then you start moving the whole graph with your arrows, right? And sometimes it freaks out and like just gets left behind with the frame, or like doesn't get moved around with the frame. So it's better to use the reroute node or widget here. Okay, so we are taking some noises. Crystals noise, again, it's something that will give you very sharp transitions, but not too sharp. Like if you take Voronoi, it's not going to be useful for slow blurs and stuff like that, because it's going to be too sharp. Like crystals noise, they have the gradients. They also have this phase settings, which basically removes or shifts parts of the crystals and gives you these like black spaces. The more you do it, there will be more of those. Let it calculate. Yeah, you can see it shifted it a little bit. Yeah, some more noises, even finer crystals. Then there is this non-uniform blur trick. You take a noise and it blurs only a part of this image. I guess what you could also do is the mask blur. Essentially the same thing. You take an input, an image, and you blur parts of it based on this intensity. I don't know if we can see it here. Yeah, you can a little bit, but that's what it does. I don't know why I used this non-uniform blur. I guess I could use the mask blur instead, because non-uniform blurs are actually quite heavy. So maybe we can replace that. This is the intensity, so we use this as mask blur, and the value was about 9%. Let's set this to 9% and use this. Does it give the same result, more or less? This one's a bit sharper. I mean, the difference is probably negligible. I don't know. Has anything changed for the... It's such a subtle effect. Yeah, it's pretty much the same. So let's just use the cheaper node. It's like 10 milliseconds at 4K, which might be relevant sometimes. I don't know if it's relevant when the whole graph runs at 26,000 milliseconds, but you know. Okay, so Oops. Yeah, I also created a vector warp so that this doesn't happen. It actually happens from time to time, but if you use this just to drive the subtraction, well, then both sides of the gap will share the same part of the noise, and that looks a bit unnatural. Well, it looks as if you just slapped a noise over your texture. So the vector warp will take the direction as we took it before, right, and shift it in random direction, and so that will break it up. So you will not have, for example, you will have a a broken part here, but not necessarily on the right side. Um, I don't know, here maybe it's more visible, right? Like we would have a whole crystal effect here, but we shifted it apart. Okay, that's it. Yeah, so you can see that I have these weird gradients and stuff. That's fine because we are just going to clamp it, really, or level it out so that we have just black and white values, or mostly black and white values. I'm also using the previous floodfill for this vector warp, and then I'm using a grayscale to mask to to limit the removal that comes from this noise to only these white parts. It's additional breakup, and that allows me to expose this parameter of how much breakup there should be overall. So if I turn this off, it will be completely black, or should be completely black. Yes, completely black. Therefore, there is no actual breakup. All right, that's it. It's not the best effect, in my opinion, but again, like it's good enough for what it is. Maybe use too many noises to create it even. But yeah, I was struggling, and I'm still struggling with creating like mid-sized details that aren't too smooth. I wanted something that was like chipping away very sharply. Like this is a nice shape. I really like that. But then I was getting a lot of weird stuff like this and this. Why is it so round here, right? And I couldn't find a good combination of noises. I'll have to think about it a bit more. But the crystal noise, and crystal noise set to something like Manhattan or Chebyshev will get you, quite far. But yes, maybe next time I would use something like fractal, terrace fractal noise. What is it called? Terrace noise, which is a basically quantized fractal sum. All right. So yeah, that's just the edgeware sort of, or chipping away at the tiles. This will go in after we blend in the cracks. Now, about the cracks. This gave me nightmares. I worked on this for so long, and it went through so many iterations. In the end, I think I found a good way to handle it, at least for the flood fills. I'm not sure if it's the best approach to actual hairline thin cracks, but we'll talk about this in a second. So first of all, how do I approach cracks? There are so many ways you could do this. In this graph I used two. The first one is just using Voronoi patterns, and a couple of them in fact. The first one, which is a bit stretched along the x. Another one which is also a bit stretched, but not so much. And I'm also playing with this disorder parameter. So let me just copy this without this. And if I increase the disorder, you will get a very... Actually, let me reset the node. Okay, so this is your typical Voronoi cell pattern. I'm sure you know what Voronoi is. Voronoi scatters random points on your texture and then tries to dilate them, tries to extend them until it runs into another. And then that distance gets taken and assigned as a value to your cell. Not entirely accurate, but you can think about it this way, right? So essentially, it's a random point that's like been extended until it ran into another one that was also extended. So that's what we have. These are the cells, right? And you can have different algorithms that go about this differently. So if you go from Manhattan, you get this very sci-fi-ish 90s, early 90s computer game looks, because obviously that's a very cheap way to create a texture. You just create a Voronoi. Chebyshev, another algorithm there, triangular, yet another. But you can already see that this is, again, like something you would see in the 90s quite a bit. Anyway, now, if we go back to the Euclidean, if we lower this order, you can see that it's just a regular square pattern point. So there is a point, there is a point. It's not there is no disorder in how it was scattered. So the distance is always uniform. So this will give you, if you go all the way to the top, this will give you fairly sharp and randomized cells with a lot of sides. And if you go a bit lower, it's going to give you more squared ones, and there will be fewer sides. On average, there will be fewer sides to your polygon that gets created by the Voronoi algorithm. So that's useful, right? Another thing you could do is to turn on these subdivisions. Normally you would do this manually, but or normally in Substance Design we would do this manually, I think. I'm not sure if they have a setting like this, but basically it takes the sum of the cells and does the operation again, right? It subdivides it. So a part of the sum of this will get more cells. So that's a breakup, and you can use it to introduce more variation. There are some controls that I don't quite understand. These factors, x, y, z, w. Not sure. I can't tell you what it does. All right. So that's the Voronoi pattern. Very basic, but it's good to talk about basics from time to time. So we have a Voronoi pattern here, number 1, number 2, and number 3. And as you can see, I'm increasing the number of subdivisions as I go. So apart from the scale and the count of the cells and the disorder, I'm also changing the number of subdivisions. So this, and when we combine all of this together, it will give us this like fairly varied look of the cracks. But that's not the biggest challenge at all. After that, we can just warp it, and edge detect it. But you can see that the edge detect will create, even though you set it to gradient direction, which is the finest algorithm and also the most expensive, you still have like quite thick cracks. Even for something very small, there is like a minimum size of the crack that the edge detection can produce. Well, for that, you have to use slow blur or something similar, but slow blur, there are some artifacts there, they shouldn't be there. That pisses me off. Anyway, let's have a look here. There shouldn't be any artifacts. Slow blur set to maximum, inverse direction, quite a high blur and quite a high intensity will eat the whites away from the cracks, giving you thinner cracks. Let me demonstrate. So let's take this Voronoi pattern. Let's edge detect it. So this is what we have. First step has to be blur, because we can't slow blur something that's pure white. Yeah, that wouldn't work. If I take this and also use it as the input, sorry, as the height, then nothing happens. It just creates a few anti-aliasing artifacts. So the first thing to do is to blur it slightly. Let's say even just 1% will be enough, because that creates a gradient. Yeah, you plug it in, and you can see this is what we get. It's way too harsh, and also it's like pushing in the wrong direction. So first of all, we have to say, I think minimum, a maximum if you invert the direction, it doesn't matter. So maximum, and then you can see we are still getting a lot of artifacts there. So we blur the input until we start getting something good. And here we have cracks that are like way thinner than before. Thanks again to Dan Betke for suggesting this. I knew that this is how it worked, but actually, before you see the actual values used, you think you're going too far anyway, that you're like doing something wrong. But you have to have quite a high intensity and quite a lot of blur. Okay, that's it. This is not a perfect solution because as you can see, we still get artifacts like this, and it will definitely show in the cracks. So yeah, I guess you could keep blurring, right? We could, let me just solo this. But by the way, when you press S to solo, there were too many S's. Slow blur. If you press S, you isolate that node, and InstaMAT will only calculate the nodes that lead to this node, that are like upstream from this node. So that saves a lot of time when you have a heavy graph and you don't want it to recompute everything while you're tweaking this little slow blur. So here we have the preview. I guess we could keep going with the slow blur. With the blur for the slow blur. Yeah, and it removes it. So it's about finding a good value. So in this case, I guess we could go for 20. Oh, maybe that's too much, right? Like start creating artifacts on the other side. So maybe 19 would be a good one, and then we could play with the seed and see whether we get too many artifacts. To be honest, like I think any material like this of this complexity will have maybe 50% of bad seeds. Maybe that's too much. Maybe I'm just bad at this, but choosing the right seed is very important. And if that doesn't work, I added controls. So that's a nice trick. So when you use this safe transform, just to move it around, right? You can expose the vector of the translation. So essentially, you have the safe transform. Here you have the translate. You expose this. Even though it's a vector, two values, you don't really care because you can make a single float number, a single floating point number, a single number with a decimal point to drive both of them. And because it's a safe transform and it's a tiling texture, when you change this, it will move the texture a little bit, and you can tweak the seed manually, so to speak. So that's a nice trick, right? Like instead of we don't really have access to this number right here. You can't expose this to the user, but you can do something down the line because this is a tileable procedural noise. You can just transform it like this, and it's going to tile. You can't rotate it, right? Like rotation would be difficult. Rotation would have to snap to 45 degrees, and that changes the scale, or 90 degrees, which basically doesn't give you much control. So this is probably like enough, right? You can shift the pattern, and therefore if you get like weird cracks somewhere that you don't like, you can try to play with this, and it will give you a bit more of a custom control for that. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let me drink again. Yeah, puer, the best tea. Chinese puer. Or if that's how you pronounce it in English, puer in Czech. Alright guys, so yeah, we have our slow blurred cracks, like this. I wanted to go for something that's slightly curved, because that's what I saw in the reference as discussed at the beginning of the stream. Yeah, but I also wanted like sharper, more Voronoi-like patterns here and there. So this one actually doesn't have. This one is actually quite sharp. If you look at this, right? Now, what determines the sharpness of the curve, or like the, I don't know what to call it, perpendicularity of that is this warp, right? Yeah. So if I turn it off, we get something that's very straight. And you can see that it opened here but since these are the small cracks, I should have showed it on a larger one. By the way, let me just delete this so that it doesn't. Here, yeah. So I have a quite high number here, quite a high number, 1.5. So let's just change this to 0, and that's going to change the whole thing. And now we have these like typical straight Voronoi shapes, which I don't love. So let's go back to 1.5. All right. Okie dokie. Now, you want to break that up, right? Like you don't want to just blend together a bunch of cracks as is, right? Because there are so many of them, and it would look weird. So what I take, and this is a technique that I actually used a couple of times before, you take the largest cracks, run them into a floodfill, so that's another floodfill. Again, random direction, and use that to vector warp the smaller ones. So you end up with something like this. You can see that these are the cells of the largest ones, and they are used to sort of moved around parts of that smaller cracks texture. And then using a floodfill to mask, you can blend them over just a few of the largest cells, right? And this, because it's a floodfill and you can go floodfill to mask, you can expose the density to the user using this density slider, right? So I do this again for the medium-sized cracks and the finest cracks, which appear here. Now here, this is the first time I use this trick. I take two masks, not just floodfill to mask, which is just your floodfill to mask driven by the density, but also a floodfill to mask, which I changed to the mode where I changed the mode to size, and you can actually change this to it should be area, not width. Whoopsie daisy. Okay, you may have to increase this a little bit. Where is it? Let's try 0.9. Yeah, that's it. That's about the size. So this defines it takes the floodfill, looks at the size of the individual cells, and then you can specify the range which will be selected by this floodfill to mask. And if you multiply these two together, you will. Why is there an opacity mask as well? Sorry, what? What? Why? I was just a mistake. So when you multiply these together, in this case, multiply because we have we are looking at the blacks. That's what we so we want to keep, right? We want only the whites. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. Let me start over. We multiply it because all we want are these white parts for this floodfill to mask, and because this is like the I can't find the words. Sorry. So. Okay, let me change the correct small density to like 50. Right. So out of this selection, we only want the parts that are smaller than this, that are within the specified range. Since we are selecting that range, it gives us whites, right? And here we have blacks and whites. So all we want to keep are the whites. Does that make sense now? Anyway, sorry for the babbling. It's a bit late, but hopefully you get the idea. Now, again, the same trick. You can specify the coverage using this density input. All right. So we end up with something like this, with medium cracks blended in and super tiny small cracks blended in as well. Then I do some post-processing, meaning I distort it some more in various directions. I also sharpen it to really get the definition up. And since I thought that it's a bit weird that we only have like high density cracks on the tiles that will be selected by a later flood fill. I also wanted to have a few which would have just a little one or maybe two large cracks. It felt more natural, more it made more sense in terms of my reference. So these cracks, I'm taking the original large cracks and yeah, Jesus Christ. Yeah, save transform. And warping them pretty much in the same way. And I will be adding them in a bit later. Yeah, so I get more variation. All right. Now, here comes the time where we blend all this together. So, first of all, we vector warp the whole thing with the flood fill taken from this, from the original tiles. And we do this twice, right? Because we want the mask to be well, first of all, we want to blend in the dense cracks, and then we also want to blend in the large cracks only. So that's why we have two masks. And then Dan suggested that I shouldn't have a completely random distribution of the cracks, because then you would have a crack here, right? That doesn't make any sense. And then you would have like a really dense cracks here, but then it would be surrounded by perfectly fine tiles. So that's not what you want, right? Like you want to have them in the same place more or less. You don't necessarily want them to be uniform, so that it doesn't look as if you had a single texture just driving all the cracks, but you want them to appear sort of together. And so for that, you can use the flood fill to mask using an input. So yes, you take a Perlin noise. It can be 256, even lower, right? Because we don't really care about the resolution, about the details. You have to increase the contrast a little bit, because Perlin noises, they are generally gray, right? Like it sort of happens to land around the middle grays. So you want to increase the contrast. And yeah, and so a single mask will drive the appearance of some of the cracks, and then you can invert it so that it doesn't, so that the larger cracks don't appear on the same tiles, right? You don't want the large crack to be like to go across all of these already quite small fragments. You want them to be like isolated here on different tiles. So you just invert it, and that's it. Yeah, you have two masks, and you can also obviously expose the intensities again. So what am I doing here actually? That's a conditional select float. Yes, because when I wanted it to remove. Okay, let's say the user wanted to remove most of the cracks. Well, then it wouldn't make sense to have these additional large cracks there either. So for that, I'm using a conditional select that says if the total amount of cracks is less than 10%, well, then the value of cracks extra large, this value here, right, for these, will also be set to 0. So I'm just like thinking about borderline extreme cases. All right, and then we just blend it all together, right? It's very simple. We just multiply in the blacks, or minimum in this case. We minimum in the cracks using this mask, and then we use the same the other mask to blend in the large ones, and that's the result. So that's the basic crack. Hello, the truth channel. Okay, the truth channel. Hello. No, you're not late exactly, but you're not exactly early, you know. I've been talking for about maybe an hour and a half. I don't know how much longer I can go, but yeah, you can always go back and rewatch it, you know. Sorry, I'll drink again. So yeah, we still haven't addressed the issue of keeping the cracks really thin. So far, we have only created a black and white mask for the flood fills that will be used to remove the fragments. Yeah, like these broken up tiles will get removed at random. Okay. So yeah, we have created also the chipping in, right? So this is our base for further processing of these fragments and tiles. All right, I guess I'll talk about one or two more steps, and that might be it for today. But we'll continue tomorrow probably. I have some time off tomorrow, and I can keep going then. All right, so then we obviously have to take another floodfill of all this. This is like the 6th floodfill, and that's not even it. There will be many more. So yeah, another floodfill, and yeah, this one will drive the actual removal or large-scale removal of the fragments. So what I'm doing here is taking two masks. Sorry, this one is the more important one. Again, I'm using a Perlin noise to drive the removal. Nothing else. I should probably also do the safe transform trick from before. So I can actually show you how this works in practice. We take this. I don't want to rotate it at all. God damn it. Yeah, I should solo this. Then we go to transform. We take the scale and we say expose this input parameter. Oh, actually, no, that's not the easiest way. The easiest way is to say make vector 2 and plug it in into translate. And then we can take a float, which we need to expose here. So we can expose this and just plug it in. And we can say whole, I don't know, large tile. Jesus Christ, I don't know. What's my naming convention here? Tile, blah, 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 removal. Okay, so tile, I don't know. General, that's not very descriptive. I can't come up with a name. What's a good name for this? Tile, patches, patch removal, large patch removal, seed, adjustment. It's not the best name. But we can now throw it here, for example. We will change it to something better, like just a slider, for example. And now, when I move this, it will change the position on this as well, right? So you can adjust the seed this way a little bit at least. It won't change the whole shape, obviously, right? But it will give you some control there. You could also, you could go much further than this. You could create random numbers here. You could, right? Like you say, random float. What's the float? Random. I always forget the naming here. Random number float. Yeah. Minimum, maximum. There is a seed which we could expose. So in fact, what we could do is this, or maybe like this. Then we expose the seed of input. Yeah. And now if we play with this, it should change change the seed of this number that drives the position of this transform in X only. Yeah, so that's maybe even a better approach than this, especially for Perlins or something that's a very large scale. But I don't think I care. I'll just do this. All right, so we exposed a bit more to the user to adjust. Let's say you find the seed that you kind of like, and then something is off. You would like the hole to be slightly to the left. You can do this this way. Oops. So yeah, we actually lost a nice hole in the middle of the texture. So let's maybe try to shift this. And I'm still soloed, huh? So we have to move that. maybe this looks a bit better. We have like a large patch here, and might be more interesting, you know? Or you can just like play with this for your particular seed, but that's something you can't expose to the user. So, all right. So that's what gives me this pattern here, or like it's not exactly a pattern, but these holes, connected holes. I like the look of it. I liked the look of it. And then we are also adding some additional removal, just in this case, just 15%. I don't know why I have a LURP here. Oh yeah, because I wanted to invert this. Because we are adding removal, right? So this actually is decreasing this value instead of increasing with the increased amount. That doesn't matter. You know, the proportion is inverse in this case. So I just wanted a few random tiles to be thrown away. So that's what this does. We are then blending it together using a multiply. Again, we just want the blacks. We just want the whites. We want the blacks to stay black. So we multiply it. And yeah, that's the initial fragment removal pass. Okay, I can finish this today. So then I'm actually creating another crack generator. This time I'm using tile scatter, which is like a weaker, I would say weaker, but more performant version of random scatter, to just scatter around some boxes, and then I'm just deforming them a little bit, actually quite a bit, using some, using the crystal noise from before, and then I'm edge detecting it. And what it does, it gives me very tile-like yet broken shapes. And since these will be fragments that sort of got loose and were scattered around the rest of the material, it's not like it doesn't stay connected to the original tiles. I liked this. You know, I thought it was a pretty good idea. I'm still not 100% happy with the shape, because sometimes you get these like weird, where was it? Like this shape. It doesn't look like a piece that came off the original tiles, but that's fine. You know, there's only so much you can do. This one is very rounded. It should be sharper, but you know, it depends on the seed. Maybe you can find one where the tiles look more convincing. So we use that. We do some usual, floodfill tricks, and we remap using this vector warp some of the cracks from before. Yeah, it's another vector warp from this one. It's a different vector warp from this one. So we are taking the first combined crack pass and remapping it onto these fragments using a multiply. Then we are doing another floodfill, because if we just use this floodfill, then we couldn't really select the fragments. It would remove the whole tile every time, and that's not what you want, or at least not what I wanted. So I'm doing the double pass again, the area pass, like the size pass, and also the coverage pass, basically the density pass, multiplying them together, and that drives some effects down the line. For now, I'm just blending these in. Again, this is not even the second layer of the cracks, that comes later. This is just these little pieces in the middle, right? These pieces, these fragments. In the terminology of my graph, I could call them loose fragments. And yeah, and this is going to be it for the initial tiling pass. I just take another floodfill out of this to get more random directions, and this will pretty much drive the rest of the graph. Here I can use this mask to drive where I want the second layer of the tiles to appear, where I want the dirt to appear, where the sort of this underlying dirt will appear. I can use this to drive the appearance of the twigs and the leaves and so on and so forth. So that's the most important mask right here. All right, now you can see that this is where the graph diverges quite a bit because this is a black and white mask, and if you just use this to drive the height map, it will give you a lot of tessellation errors, and also it will give you super thick cracks that go all the way through the height map to the bottom, right, to 0. And yeah, so you have to, this is, I want, originally I had this and only this, right? I used this as a base for my height for the tiles, but that ended up looking awful. These cracks were like double or triple the size. They went all the way through, so it didn't look too convincing. There was no way to isolate them for coloring, etc., etc. So I had to come up with a way to reintroduce the cracks using a bevel. So for that, this is what's happening here. And I think I'll talk about this tomorrow because I'm getting tired and I'm losing my voice. So I think this is it. Just to recap, we created the base graph, the base grid graph, and the initial setup for the tiles. We also created the damage for the base grid. Then we introduced quite a bit of the finer damage and these like cracks and holes and what have you. We used a lot of scattering for that, various noises, various branches. It wasn't the most optimized workflow. I think I could go back and remove some of the excess noises that don't really show up or show through. But that's fine for now. In terms of performance, this is not the best, but the heavy part of this graph is in the floodfills, mostly, anyway. All right, then we started working on the cracks here, using the Voronoi blending workflow with random direction and vector warps, and floodfill to masks. And we also did the same for the tiles here. And again, flood-filled random directions, created some more edge breakup, and then used all these masks to start blending the effects together to give us a basic height map with removed fragments. So it's all about like finding the good looking crack pattern and then breaking it up using vector warps and masks to create this layered removal algorithm. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you find this interesting. It's not the most advanced workflow, but it was certainly time consuming. Yeah, that's it, I guess. If you have any questions, now would be the time to ask. Of course, you can, the future posterity, children of the night, you can ask in the comments if you like. You can, of course, find me on Discord, especially on InstaMAT's Discord. My name is Adam Šimek. You can find me under my own name. I know that's very unusual, right? People using their own names. But yeah, I don't always go by DKNS Design. So you can find me under my own name. Contact me there. And yeah, I think in the coming weeks, I'll optimize this material. And then, if you're interested, I think I will put it up on Gumroad or something like that, and you will be able to buy it. I need money. It's the money. All right, you guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.